A clue to who? Douglas Clodsworth, also known as Grandpa Doug, sat in his study, staring at the empty spot on the mantel where his prized golden pocket watch once rested. The precious gift from his late wife had vanished without a trace. Doug's 3 sons gathered in the room, tension thick in the air. Robert, the eldest, paced nervously, his wife, Sarah, trying to calm their 2 rambunctious children, Donovan, age 15, and Christine, age 10. Michael, the middle son, stood with his arm around his wife, Charlotte. And then there was James. James would spend countless nights analyzing that Friday evening, turning each mundane moment over in his head like stones in a river. How could everything have seemed so ordinary when their world was already fracturing beneath the surface? In the corner, James shifted his weight from foot to foot, fighting the urge to retreat to the library. At 27, he was well past the age where hovering at the edge of family discussions should make him uncomfortable. Yet, here he was, the youngest son, still struggling to find his voice. "Boys," Doug began, "you know how important that watch is to me. We need to find it." James was the last person anyone would expect to step up as a leader. Years of watching from the sidelines had made him nearly invisible to his family. But sometimes the quietest observers see what others miss. Little did they know, James would be a major help in revealing the shocking truth behind its disappearance. The next morning, while everyone was gathered in the living room, James cleared his throat, preparing to speak. "I've been observing things around the house lately," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "and I noticed something strange last night." His eldest brother, Robert, raised an eyebrow. "What exactly did you see, James?" James hesitated, his caring nature making him reluctant to cast suspicion on anyone. "I woke up in the middle of the night and I decided to go get a snack in the kitchen. While I was making my way back to bed, I thought I saw someone moving near Grandpa's study around midnight. I only caught a shadow, though. I thought it was just my imagination, but now..." Michael, the middle brother, leaned forward. "Go on, James. We need to know everything." "Well," James continued, attempting to piece together the puzzle, "this morning I also found some dirt on the carpet leading from the study to the back door. It looked like someone had tried to clean up, but missed a few spots." Grandpa Doug's eyes widened. "The back door? But that's always locked." A heavy silence fell over the room as realization dawned. The thief had to be someone with access to the house keys. Michael's wife, Charlotte, suddenly gasped. "Wait a minute. Didn't Uncle Fred visit yesterday? He always brags about being a locksmith in his younger days." "My brother," Grandpa Doug said, with his hands gripping the armrest. "You are mistaken, my dear. He wouldn't go within a mile of that kind of trouble. You don't know him like I do. Fred gave away his last dollar to help a person in need more times than I can count. Okay, everyone, please calm down. Who cleaned up the floor? James asked. I did, said Christine. I swept the floor this morning. Mama helped me clean too. Robert's face turned stern. Christine, my darling, why would you make such a mess like that in Grandpa's beautiful house? Donovan, you're probably the leader of all this unacceptable behavior, Robert yelled. Don't be too hard on them, please, Robert, Sarah pleaded gently. Donovan and Christine both had guilty looks on their faces. Christine softly spoke up, apologizing. I'm sorry, Mama. I'm sorry, Grandpa. Me and Donovan were playing outside, and then we started to play inside. Well, we didn't use the back door, though. We only touched the back door as a safe zone, where you couldn't be tagged if you were touching the door. Robert sighed. Thank you for apologizing, Christine, and for helping clean up. Donovan, Robert raised his voice, where is your apology? Donovan stood, staring at the ground. I'm sorry. We were only trying to have some fun, he said solemnly, as though he was exhausted. What kind of half-hearted apology was that? Do you want to be grounded for even longer? Robert bellowed. No, sir, said Donovan, continuing to avoid eye contact. Calm down, Robert. He helped clean up too, said Sarah. I'm sorry for making a mess, said Donovan. Robert began to simmer down. Fine then. Dad, do you want to say anything? Grandpa Doug looked at the kids for a moment before speaking. It was news to everyone that Donovan had been grounded. What kind of trouble had he been getting into lately? James didn't have children, but he couldn't shake the sense that Robert seemed to be somewhat overreacting. Grandpa Doug finally began to speak. Your dad might be tough on you, but it's only because he loves you and wants the best for you, he began gently. When I was young, we didn't have much, but we had each other, and that was more than enough. Your father just wants to make sure you understand the importance of hard work and respect. The kids glanced at each other, absorbing Grandpa Doug's words. Robert's stern expression softened as his father's wisdom resonated with him. Grandpa Doug's eyes twinkled with a sudden idea. How about we have some fun with art, he suggested. Donovan, Christine, let's turn the backyard into our own art studio. The kids' faces lit up with excitement as they rushed to find old t-shirts and their makeshift smocks. Sarah and Michael helped Doug set up the backyard. They spread out large sheets of paper on the grass and arranged an array of paints and brushes on a table. Donovan and Christine dove right in, splattering vibrant colors across the paper with wild abandon. Laughter filled the backyard as the kids mixed colors and created their masterpieces. James was not surprised by his father's brilliant idea. Though Robert's temperament had settled, a faint scowl lingered on his face as he drank his coffee in the living room. James and Robert were far apart in age, and that made it hard to relate to each other at times. Plus, Robert was the type of person that felt he was always right about most things. Robbie, James said in a light tone. James? How are things going these days? Really? Perfectly fine. What about Sarah? How's married life? Robert gave James a quick smile. She's simply extraordinary. James saw a twinkle in his brother's eye. I'm a lucky man. One day you will be too, James. Just please promise me you'll be cautious. James gave a soft nod. Thank you. I look forward to it. Robert narrowed his eyes. It's not easy, though. Well, of course not. Especially adding children to the equation, I'm sure, James said. Robert sighed. You know, I love them both. Maybe it's just the teen years, but more and more, Donovan has become so aggravating, obstinate, downright shameful. He doesn't need paint, he needs military school, said Robert. James couldn't help but laugh a little. If I remember correctly, you and Dad had this similar dynamic, said James. Robert laughed. I guess. At least I figured out how to use my relentless determination in the business world as a management consultant. Donovan uses his hard-headedness to be, well, ridiculous, said Robert, rubbing his forehead as if fighting off a headache. When you talk to him, does he tell you what's going on in his world? James inquired. When I talk to Donovan, everything goes in one ear and out the other, or I get some type of snarky comment. James paused, not sure how his brother would take what he had to say next. Do you talk to him or talk at him? Asked James. James, why don't you talk to me when you have kids? Then you'll understand. Robert took another sip of his coffee. I'm merely pointing out that when Dad talked to Donovan in the living room earlier, he stopped looking down and he looked up.